Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Well, if things couldn't get worse, I've got bad news for you. Don Thousand's numeronious cards, the final boss monsters, have also been introduced into the game. For anyone who isn't aware, the other ones have been causing havoc in the past. You basically summon them and you can OTK your opponent. You can go into F0, which stuns your opponent. And there are multiple effects as well. I think there's a burn effect in there as well, where you can just use the normal battle phase to wipe out most of your opponent's life points, and then use the secondary effect to just wipe out the remaining ones. These cards are incredibly dangerous, and unfortunately, there's not too much you can do to really out them. Anyway, we'll cover them. The Chaos numbers 1000, which is number C1000 Numeronius, is a rank 12. Light attribute fiend type exceeds effect monster, question mark in both attack and defense, and it requires 5 level 12 monsters. Its first effect, once per turn, as a quick effect, you can detach one material from this card to destroy one other monster on the field. Second effect, at the end of the battle phase, destroy all other monsters on the field. Then you can special summon one monster from your opponent's graveyard in defense position. And the third effect, if this card in your monster zone is destroyed by your opponent's card effect, while it has material and is sent to your graveyard, you can special summon one number IC1000 Numeronius Numeronia from your extra deck, and if you do, attach this card to it as material. If you look a bit later on, it'll actually cover and reason why it has question marks, attack and defense, because at the moment you can't see that on this card's effect. But as it is, the initial effect, quick effect to destroy a monster, it's a bit meh, it's an okay effect, and if you have knowledge of what your opponent is running, perfectly fine, you know what to target, you know how to stop their strategy getting any further, but potentially if you're a novice, you just don't know how to use this card, it's not really going to make that much difference to use that ability. The other thing is, lots of cards now have inbuilt protection from either monster effects, spell or traps, in some way or another, or means of recovering each other much easier. The second part of the effect, I love this effect. It just destroys everything. It basically dark holes everything but itself, and it gets you one of your opponent's monsters. This might seem quite unusual of an ability, and yes, the downside is it does put your opponent's monster into defense position, so essentially you can't really use it. You can't use it for attack, unless you just can't. But the thing is, you can still use their abilities. They're not negated, there's no other condition, and it's not a case of something like brain control where it returns to your opponent. It just, on the very next turn, will get destroyed by this Chaos Numeronius effect. So it's quite decent. You can pull from their resources, use their the strong monsters as well, to push them. And the last effect is brilliant. When we cover Numeronius Numeronia, you will see how powerful that card is. Okay, so here we go. It's number IC1000 Numeronius Numeronia. It's a rank 13. I think this is the only rank 13 in the game. It's very unusual because you don't actually have level 13 monsters. They go anywhere from level 1 to level 12, so you can't normally summon this. It has to be summoned by a different way. It's a rank 13 light attribute fiend type exceeds effect monster with question mark attack and defense. Again, it requires 5 level 13 monsters. Its first effect, if this card was special summoned by the effect of number C1000 Numeronius, it gains 100,000 attack and defense during your opponent's turn only. Also begin applying the following effects when the next turn begins after this card was special summoned. Each monster your opponent controls must attack this card if able. When your opponent's turn ends, if this card has not battled that turn, you win the duel. The second effect, when an opponent's monster attacks, you can detach one material from this card, negate that attack, and if you do, gain life points equal to that monster's attack. For the first effect, that is amazing. I don't know of any other monsters that have a similar effect. I think the nearest thing you've got is that Chaos armor tile, which is the fusion of the 3 Sacred Beast monsters, and that gains 10,000 attack, I think, just for the battle phase. In this case, this happens for 100,000 attack only during your opponent's turn. That might seem like a bit of a disadvantage, but it actually forces your opponent to attack this monster, otherwise you win the duel. By having that kind of effect, it forces your opponent to do something. It is the downside of it, and I see it as a massive downside, is it doesn't have inbuilt protection for itself. I can see why. If it had all the forms of protection as well as this effect, it would be undefeatable, it would be indestructible, you could not get over this card. It's necessary for it to have that kind of weakness that, okay, it's a big beat stick, but nothing more. Being able to kind of shut it down by various effects is just a decent way of counteracting this card. Although saying that, with the secondary effect, you are able to prevent your opponent's monsters from attacking, so if they've got any sort of effect where they remove a monster, for example, through the effect of DD Warrior Lady, if you're able to, prevent yourself from taking battle damage that turn, at least those effects can't come through. So that's a way of it protecting itself. And of course, the life point boost is always welcome. And the final card is Numeron Chaos Ritual. It's a normal spell card. Its effect is 1 during the turn at face at number C1 Numeron Chaos Gate Sunya you control was destroyed by a monster effect. You can target 1 Numeron network and 4 number Xyz monsters in your possession that are banished or in the graveyard. Special summon 1 number C1000 Numeronius from your extra deck, but its attack becomes 10,000 and its defense becomes 1,000. Then attach those 5 targets to it as material. For the rest of the turn, you can only normal or special summon a monster once. And so this is the card I was talking about for the original Numeronius card. That's how it gets its stat lines, by being able to recover the various numbers to form it. The disadvantage is it does have to... Chaos Gate Sunya has to be destroyed by a monster effect. It is okay because it can be your own and it can be your opponent's, so it doesn't matter which. But unless your opponent is going to know what you're running, and they're not going to deliberately do this, unless for whatever reason, that they've just not thought about it. Generally, this card is okay, but it being a normal spell card means you're going to have to force your opponent to kind of trigger an effect. It would have been much better if it had been a quick play ritual or a quick play spell card just to get that effect off. Essentially, these cards do add to the power of the deck, but people have identified massive weaknesses of them. The biggest card, I would say, is Magic Cylinder, because it reflects all the battle damage to your opponent as effect damage. Essentially, you OTK yourself if you end up running into that card. So it's just not wise to use, and there are various outs. If this card and these cards had been released at the time Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal was ending, that's when Don 1000 appeared, maybe these cards would have had the viability. As it is now, there are so many ways of kind of getting rid of them, even if you do have to kind of face down the F-Zero as a consequence.